You skipped it, you dissed it, you said it's a bore. But what if that film's got a little bit more? What if I don't like it? What if it's bad? What if it's awkward or lazy or sad? But what if it's genius, a total surprise? What if it's gold when I open my eyes? We're watching the films you love to avoid. Now sit down and deal with your cinephile void. What if I don't like it? Let's give it a spin. You might hate it or love it. Let's dive right in.
Welcome to another episode of What If I Don't Like It? Today we're talking about Paprika, but before we jump in with my guest Aaron Wood, I thought we should dissect some of the reasons why people might not like this movie and why I think it is still worth your time. Paprika is one of those movies that hits like a dream you kind of half remember but you can't totally shake. Definitely by about 10 minutes in you're thinking, what just happened? And that is absolutely okay. The dream logic kicks in immediately. It is chaotic. It is nonlinear. It's like trying to read Freud while skydiving through a Dali painting. And yes, some people are absolutely going to hate that. So if you're expecting a clean 3-act structure with like a tidy little ending, Paprika's going to wind up just kind of laughing at you and floating away into a parade of frogmen. Visually, it is overwhelming in the best way. It is full of surreal, layered imagery that doesn't wait around for you to kind of catch up. Some people are going to love that sensation, and others are going to watch it and go, well, no thanks, I'm kind of anxious enough already. And I get that. The characters don't exactly invite you into the emotional connection either, but they're not really there to hold you through a narrative arc. They're there to represent ideas, and that's the point. Paprika isn't interested in comfort. It's interested in asking what happens when identity collapses inside our dreams, and then technology makes that collapse even worse. And honestly, this is what makes it so brilliant for me. Kon isn't just telling a story, he's building a world that behaves like our subconscious. You don't just watch Paprika, you inhabit it. And that makes it kind of feel dense, but it's asking huge questions, like who controls our dreams? Where does identity end in the digital world? How much of us is already hidden and leaking out into that digital world? And then you rewatch it and you're like, oh my god, there's so many new layers. It never feels like homework. It feels like a puzzle box, a beautiful, weird, sometimes disturbing thing that just keeps opening up to you more and more. So yeah, it might feel like chaos the first time around, but Paprika is a masterpiece and you just have to let the dream take over. And we're going to talk about it on this next episode of What If I Don't Like It, dropping on the 15th or maybe tomorrow, depending on when you're hearing this. My guest is artist Aaron Wood. Yeah, the guy who did the Girl in the Basement posters, plus tons of board game art you probably love without realizing it. At the end of the day, Paprika isn't here to comfort you. It's here to mess with your perception in the best possible way. And if that sounds like your kind of nightmare, you'll definitely want to catch the next episode of What If I Don't Like It. Welcome to the episode. This time we are talking about a movie I absolutely love with someone I think you guys are going to love too. This is Aaron Wood and the episode is Paprika. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here and been a big fan of your film work and your film studies work for a long time now.
Thank you so much. I have mentioned you a couple times on this show and definitely mentioned you on Movie Night Extravaganza because you designed the poster for Girl in the Basement.
Oh, right. That's right. Yes. That actually came up not too long ago. I think Jared had shared it on something and I don't know, about a year ago. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I did that.
Yes. I sometimes feel like that with some of my earlier horror films. I'll be like, oh yeah, I did that.
Did do that.
Oh no, I recently was watching TV and I literally did a very small role in some horror movie and I'm watching the movie earnestly as a human being who did not stand in it. And it gets to the point where I started doing work on it and I'm like, oh fuck, not only do I know how this ends.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a trip. That's got to be like some bizarre thing. Like, yeah,
Because there's, they're B movies. You don't always track them down. They don't always have a title when you're working on them.
It's true.
But yes, that poster was kind of Sal Bello inspired, and it's really lovely.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I definitely went a certain direction with it to kind of fit a
Mhm.
certain thing, and it did come out exactly how I wanted it. So,
Yeah,
and you guys too. You guys loved
me
it also.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those custom art dreams where you're like, I don't have to really send back any notes. Nailed it. Like I don't have to be the pain in the ass. Like, what if it was blue? Like,
Yeah, yeah. It all just kind of went in a good direction. I wish all my freelance gigs were like that.
I think because I also sometimes do freelance illustration, I do it so thinly because I have such a bad skin for it that I try not to be a pain in the ass about it.
Oh,
Um, it also reminded me a lot of those pieces of art that I think if a lot of people aren't familiar with your name, they might be familiar with these pieces of art because they were in Urban Outfitters for a period of time. The like fantasy poster, tourism posters that were also vector art style.
yeah, yeah. I did all those travel and propaganda type posters early 2011 to about 2015 or 2016, where I imagined all these social media sites as they're waging this war, this World War II style propaganda war against each other. Who's going to be the winner over Google and Facebook and Twitter? And also, I did a series of food related posters. I made one that said "Support the United Nation of Bacon." And that one was sold in Urban Outfitters. It had like bacon planes and a bacon flag, and yeah, so it was pretty cool to see that and get out there.
That was a while ago. So how has your art kind of changed since then? What are other things that you're doing now?
Oh my goodness. So I've gotten into two major things since about 2015, 2016. I started to do on the art front, like poster wise or in that same vein, I started to do these Works Progress Administration inspired posters, these WPA inspired national park posters that kind of fit into sci-fi and fantasy related things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, but imagined like they were Yellowstone poster or Arches or something like that.
Yeah.
And those have been really, really well received, to the point that I started to get a lot of other work from that. Commission work from people like Smith College had me do a whole series of posters based
Nice.
off of their library system in that same style. So that was pretty cool. And then the other thing I've been working on is a lot of board game related freelance work, whether it's illustration or it is um, graphic design for them, everything from logos to rulebook layout. So I just finished up the work on my 20th project recently. So over the last like 7 years or so, I've gotten consistent work in that field too. So it's pretty cool.
That's wonderful. Adult board games are like the it right now. I mean, we grew up, we still wanted to keep playing board games. I subscribe to Finders Seekers. This isn't a paid ad. I just play their games.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love gaming, and I grew up playing Scrabble with my family and Uno and Sorry and Monopoly and all those games. And as I got older, in like 2011, they came out with like Catan around then, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. So it's like, yeah, it's grown into a $1 billion industry, which is kind
Oh
of
yeah.
nuts. But I'm glad to be a part of it. And the last project that I did I got credits as an artist and as a graphic designer. Artist credits with some really big people in the board game art industry. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. It
That is
kind of like
awesome.
humbled me a little bit, but yeah, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it is a very, it can kind of get niche down. For example, my husband and subsequently I have been drawn into a board game called Twilight Imperium.
Twilight
I
Imperium, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and like Space Cats, Peace Turtles, their whole Discord, the fire behind the people in that, and there's like this whole community of people who want to spend 12 hours playing a game on a day.
yes. Oh, it's you can get really involved with these things. The
Mhm.
other aspect is you can really upgrade these games too. You might get these little paper chits with your game, but you want to turn them into little glass beads or 3D printed stuff, and it is way beyond me for a lot of games. I have one game I've upgraded, but most of them, there are people out there that just that's all they do is upgrade their games and make them all crazy. It's a lot of fun.
This is the face of someone who has bought a 3D printer for their Twilight Imperium game.
I can imagine. I've played
It
it
is
once, and yeah,
I.
all those ships and everything, yeah, and
I
card
just
holders and
the card holders. I want things to hold everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the more organized. It's funny. As I started to play more and more board games, they start to take up more and more table spaces. They get more elaborate, and then we
Mhm.
print these 3D things to try to rein them back in and reorganize them, but they still take up huge amounts of space. It's
One
it's
day you're
it's daunting.
yeah, you're thinking about buying a table just for a specific game.
So I've known people that have done that. I need an 8 foot by 4 foot table for this specific war game or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
you're
pretty
learning
crazy.
woodworking skills. You're like, I gotta drop it in for an inset. I
Yeah.
mean, hey, whatever
Uh,
gets you going, right?
exactly. Exactly.
And all of these expansions need art, and then and there are fans even
Hmm.
coming in and bringing art, which is a great way for people to kind of test doing what you're doing and get into the field. I love that it feels
Hmm.
a little bit more inclusive than, say, some of the illustrative art fields can feel.
Yes, it really is. And I know people that are influencers on Instagram in the boarding community that have now been put into certain games. I've drawn myself into a little indie card game, so it's, yeah, you get this community that comes together and they find ways to work yourself in or just
Mhm.
become part of that, game or
Yeah.
community. It's really kind of cool.
We had a guest on for our Cabin in the Woods episode. His name is Matt Strackbean, and he is also called the Letter Hack. And he is a comic artist that he started drawing himself into his illustrations as well as like the voice of what was going on. And it's weird to do that, but
Oh,
it's also kind of like fun to suddenly participate at that level.
isn't it? I had a couple buddies that used to do a podcast. Oh, if I could only remember the name of it, years ago in the Western Mass area, and they were really into the comic book community. Someone at DC drew them into a Jonah Hex comic. They were the bad guys in the Jonah Hex issue, and my buddy Matt, he came up to me at one of the shows that I was at, and he pulls out this comic, and he's like, Aaron, look, and he's like flipping through the pages, and he's like, this is me and my buddy right here, and I'm like, oh my god, that's you guys. Yeah, so it was
Yes,
so cool, to see that. My friends
yeah,
were in a images, likenesses were in a comic book. That was a big
yes.
name comic too. Yeah.
Yeah, that is
It's
how
cool.
Matt got in Hellboy. He got hired to
My
do the like
goodness.
interstitial explanation cartoons because he had been writing in so much to complain about how they killed off his favorite character.
Oh
And
boy, that is
oh,
too
bless.
much. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I love it. I love when the community is like, look, come on.
yeah, yeah.
If you're
That's
going to be
awesome.
here every day anyway, I guess you work here.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Actually, I've gotten a few jobs just from having been in the store too many times.
My goodness, it happens. You really get to know these people and these places and these businesses, and yeah, you just kind of become part of that thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
And you know where everything is. So one one too many times you help a customer just accidentally, and then the manager's like, "Hey, you want a discount because you're already working here?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that it does happen. Yeah, you want to jump behind the counter and help this person out? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then yeah,
Have Have you ever worked at any comic book shops? I could feel like a graphic designer, comic book artist. That's a good
I
crossover.
haven't, but I have
Ah.
worked at two print shops before, so I get
Mm.
the behind. I feel it's really as important as an artist, any kind of artist, to know how to reproduce your work. And I worked at a full print uh, company that had a full 8 color offset press, and I've also worked at smaller print shops. And you get to know the process that's after I do something, what will it take to produce this, to make this box art into a box, or how these
Mm.
cards will be produced. Um, And it really is fascinating. And a lot of artists don't know about that or don't even think to know about that. So the more knowledge you have on that end, if I'm ever looking at someone's portfolio or anything at a show, I'm always telling people like, know how to reproduce this, know what goes into it. Even if you're not doing it yourself and someone's doing it for you, know how to set that up for them, and get it all ready to go. So unfortunately, I've hung around comic book stores, but I never had a job. I had friends that worked there, and I would have loved to have worked at a comic book store at some point, but it just never panned out. I was either off at college or doing something else. So yeah, but that would have been a
Sometimes
dream.
it's better not to know how the sausage is made anyway, so
100%, a hundred
Yeah.
percent. I almost got a gig one time, but I wasn't able to lift 40 pounds or more. It would have been doing helping
Inventory.
restock, and I could not do that. So I unfortunately had to turn the gig down. It was like right in my hand, but I'm like, no, I can't help you there. So yeah, at a local shop, but it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. At least if you found that out before you started doing all the training and stuff, that would be a pain
Oh
in
my
the
God.
ass. Right.
Yeah. Here, 2 weeks in, now lift this. Like I'm useless. I'm just gonna push it around the floor.
I almost quit my first waitressing job because of something similar to that. They sent me in the basement to go get the butter
Hmm.
chips, like little tiny ones for bread. I
Yeah.
went and grabbed the butter sticks. I'm not going to make that hand gesture, butter sticks. Um, and they were a 50-pound box of butter sticks. So
Oh
there I
boy.
am, and I'm like 19 years old. I think I weigh like 3 boxes of butter, and I'm just
Yeah.
like dragging it up the steps from the basement, about to cry and quit. And they're like, "Honey, we would have never sent you downstairs to get that."
Oh, at least they knew they don't do that. They recognize who should be getting these heavy lifting gigs, and
Well, nobody gets it. They cut the box open, they take some
oh, they
butter
take you
out.
you bring the whole.
They're like, "Girl,
Oh boy. Yeah.
we never
Yeah.
need
Talk
50
about
pounds of butter at once.
above and beyond. You went above and beyond.
I
Oh my
need this
goodness.
job so bad."
Oh, that's
So
hilarious.
of course, this is going to be in the liner notes. We've got some links. I think you sent me the link to your Etsy shop. Is that the best way for people to check out, purchase stuff if they're interested in seeing and getting your art?
Yes, yeah, my Etsy store, and also you can always get in touch with me if you see something you don't see something that you want and think I might be able to do it through my Instagram. And then I also sell a lot more than I do on my online store at actual conventions and shows, which I have a bunch coming up starting in July.
Wonderful. And of course, following you on social media, that's how you're going to find out where these conventions are going to be.
Exactly. Yep.
The big noggin over here. As we move into talking about the movie that we've got today, Paprika, I like to ask my guests a couple of loose questions about movies to get us going. So we're going to move into that part right now and start with the very first question, which is, what's the first movie you can remember seeing?
Okay, that would probably be around the time of Star Wars. So I was 6 years old, and I do remember seeing it three times in three different places. But the one that stands out the most was at the drive-in.
Oh,
My parents took
wow.
me. We would load up the back of the pickup truck. We'd all get in the back, drive to the Northfield Drive-In, put the tailgate down, and watch movies. I saw so many movies. It was either that or the Latches Theater in Brattleboro, Vermont. But Star Wars in '77 was pretty much the first movie that I definitely remember seeing, and we came in late. And I know the scene. It's the scene where Luke is looking at the Sand People, and all of a sudden one rises up in front of him. We were parking the truck, and the bed of the truck was facing the screen. And I remember taking the blankets off and looking, and that scene happened, and that is just kind of burned in the old brain box up here. Yeah, that would be pretty much the earliest memory I have.
That's wonderful. A couple of guests have said, if not the first Star Wars, one of the Star Wars movies. Given the age of people I'm
Hmm.
bringing on here, it's common. That, although a lot of people say Wizard of Oz because that's just a common thing to show a
Ah,
kid.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I do think that I wonder if there's any correlation between people who got involved in a very visual field and Star Wars, because what you're describing is this overwhelm. Your senses are totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, 100%. Like space and blaster bolts and Sith and Jedi and like all this stuff, these different locations really imprint on you. And these great Ralph McQuarrie. After you see the movie, there wasn't online. You couldn't go look at extras or whatever, but there were still like magazines like Starlog and stuff like that. You could look at these images and it just kind of led to this rabbit hole. And I honestly believe that, yeah, a lot of people who watched a lot of sci-fi, even in the 50s or the 60s, just went into this, probably into more creative fields because of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and those images start to kind of populate your brain when you start to think of like, how am I going to create a sci-fi universe as an artist? I think a
Hmm.
lot of people go to the first time they saw sci-fi, and maybe it's more, Geiger because you did Aliens than it is Star
Yeah.
Wars, and you can see instantly, as if it was an AI generating,
Mm.
the base difference
Oh
where we
yeah, totally.
started.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm, that's a good one. How are you? Are you watching any of Andor?
I just finished episode 9,
I have.
literally like 45 minutes ago.
I just started episode 7 last night. I keep myself slightly behind because I am an absolute shit if it cuts and I have to wait a week. I am not a cool person to be around. And I've learned that
Yeah,
about
yeah,
myself.
yeah. And you definitely, yeah, need to block off time. They're in 3 episode chunks, and it kind of is. They will end that first episode of that block kind of in a cliffhanger, and you're like, or just, you're like, what happens next? Yeah, don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
For All Mankind does that really, really, really badly
oh,
to the point where I watch it across episodes. So I watch it from the middle of one episode to the middle of another episode, just so that I'm like, look, I watch it on my time.
that's such a good. It's almost like hate watching, but on your terms. Like I'm gonna watch this, but I'm doing it so I don't get that cliffhanger, that blackout scene at the end. I'm just gonna block out this chunk of time between these 2 episodes. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
It is
that's
a
a good
very good
strategy.
show. I do enjoy it, but it is manipulative as fuck.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And there are shows out there that just the writers and the directors and everybody just do that on purpose just to turn those screws to keep you coming back and keep you on the edge of your seat. So
Hmm.
good.
Especially if you know that you're at the end of a season. You know it's going to be bad.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Everything in that 8, 10, 12 episodes is going to culminate in something that is just going to keep you wanting more. And in this day and age, it sucks because a lot of shows, I mean, even back in the day, they get canceled and you never
Hmm.
find out what happens, and
Hmm.
we live in an age kind of now where studios are taking a little more chance on some things that they know they should. So yeah, we will get the end of Andor coming up next week.
Right. Yeah. I think Andor is a wonderful like middle ground for people. It's often pitted Star Wars fans versus Star Trek fans. And I think
Yes.
that for me the difference is that Trek is a little bit more gray whereas Star Wars is a little bit more good guys bad guys. And
Hmm.
Andor is kind of the middle place where they're like maybe not everybody who's good is great.
You're absolutely right. They have these people who aren't black and white. I mean, everybody's got this shade of gray to them. That's, are they good? Are they bad? Are why? What are their motivations for doing these things? And stuff gets dark, And
Mhm.
yeah, whereas when you're in the Star Trek universe, it is kind of a lot grayer, But overall, Star Wars universe is Jedi versus Sith, light side, dark side, that whole thing. It's kind of outlined, and that's the way that Lucas wanted it because he watched the pulps, and these serials and everything was you had your hero, you had your villain, But in Star Trek, you
Mhm.
get this nuance, a lot of times, and sometimes you don't even as you're watching as when you're younger as a kid, you don't think about all these things, until you back later on. You're like, oh yeah, racism. Oh yeah, all this other
Yeah.
stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so subtle. Do you have a preference for either universe? I feel like it's kind of shitty to say that one has to have a preference for either universe. Since I like the grayness, I feel like people should exist in a grayness of both of those likes.
It's true. Although I am huge Star Wars fan, and I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Tarantino fan. I like his work. I know people who don't, and I know people who absolutely love his stuff. But he has one of my most favorite deleted scenes ever, and it's when Mia Wallace is talking to Vincent Vega, and she says, "You're either an Elvis fan or you're a Beatles fan," and I live my life kind of like that sometimes. Sometimes I look at somebody, I'm like, that's an Elvis fan. Like I'm a huge Beatles fan, not so much Elvis. And I've said that to people before, and they'll look at me and they'll be like, yeah, I do like the Beatles more. Oh, it's Elvis all the way. I love his gospel stuff. So when I look at Star Trek versus Star Wars, I often think about it that way. And it sometimes is what you're exposed to first, or, you know, what you saw with your family first or whatever. But yeah, I like your, you know, philosophy that, yeah, you can like them equally. And I love Star Trek too. I love Brave New World is so good. The writing is great. Um, I love the original series and all that. And yeah, there's good stuff and bad stuff about both franchises. And I look at it like it's just more. You get more stuff in this
Yes.
universe. So
Yes.
yeah, give me
Yeah.
more.
Give me more sci-fi, right?
Give me more
I am a big
sci-fi.
fan of sci-fi.
Yeah.
Our second question. What movie do you think you've seen the most times in your entire life?
Wow. What movie has I seen the most times in my entire life? Um, that's actually so it's going to probably be one. It's probably going to be Return of the Jedi. And more modern stuff. It's kind of funny because I used to put on the reboot Star Trek as kind of like background, so the new Trek or whatever. And I used to put that on when I was working and just have that on. So I'd watch that like a bunch of times, like dozens of times, just having it on while I worked. So that's kind of funny that you actually asked that, and I just like we were just talking about Star Trek. But yeah, it
Beautiful.
would have to be Return of the Jedi because that is my favorite out of all the Star Wars movies. So
Good.
yeah.
It is funny. I do put Next Generation on when I just need some like background noise. It's very calming. I don't care. Like I know all of them. I've seen it so many times. Uh, what is your favorite scene in that movie? If you have a
In return, it would definitely be when the space battle at the end, and everyone is always like, well, what's your favorite Star Wars movie? And I say it's got to be Return of the Jedi. They're like, oh, it's got to be Empire for me. It's got to be Empire. That's when the stakes are the highest. That's when the heroes are down. That's the middle area. And I'm always like, no, for me it is Return of the Jedi, because my favorite scene is when they're attacking the Death Star. It is a war in the stars. It is Star Wars. So when I remember being a kid and going in '83, and I'll get to a funny story in a second, which is kind of a tragedy. But anyway, I'm watching this in the theater, and I'm watching these X-wings, fly through the Death Star, and the Falcon flying through the Death Star, and I felt like I was like right there. And the Death Star's firing on the Mon Calamari cruiser, and they're blowing all these things up, and I'm just like, I'm so pumped. I'm 13 years old, and I'm like right there. So, a funny aside, talking about going to the Latches Theater in Brattleboro, uh, my parents took me to see all the Star Wars movies. I saw The Empire. I go to see Return, and we pull up outside, and my parents turn to me and they go, Aaron, we have something to tell you. And I'm like, what? I'm like 12 years old. And they go, we went to see this last night without you. And I was mortified. I'm like, at 12 years old, I'm like, how could you betray me? Like this Greek tragedy, like, oh my goodness, like the daggers right in my heart. And I'm like, how could you, like, and they're like, yeah, we had a date last night. We went to see it. And at the time, my parents were probably in their 20s, and they're geeks, they're nerds, and but yeah, I will never get over that. I'm like sitting in a parking lot in Brattleboro, Vermont, like basically like tears streaming down my face. Like, how could you do this to me?
betrayal.
Like the
A
Godfather,
betrayal.
like
Yeah.
Fredo. But
Yes.
yeah, that really got me.
An epic level betrayal. I kind of
Yeah,
want to hand it to your parents for choosing
yeah,
to even tell you. Because they could
I
have just
know.
lied to you for your entire life, but they
Yeah,
respected you enough to say, you know
yeah,
what? We're going to
yeah,
tell him. And
yeah.
not
We're gonna tell 'em.
after, before.
Yeah, yeah. Before we even walked in there, yeah. but I went in there and like totally, sucked it up, went in and like loved every second of that movie.
Because I've had experiences where like one of the most worst film experiences I've ever had was my first boyfriend ever. I came to visit him long distance. As soon as I get to his apartment, he breaks up with me.
Oh my
Tells me
goodness.
that he's going to go stay somewhere else for the 2 days that I'm there. The apartment is mine, and he's rented me a copy of Dead Man.
Goodness.
So I
Is
sit
that
down
Liam
and I
Neeson?
start.
Is Dead Man
That's
Liam Neeson?
Dead
Oh, that's
Man
Dark Man.
is
I'm sorry.
Johnny Depp. It's
Yes.
it's
Oh,
not Aronofsky. It's Aronofsky, right? Yeah.
Aronofsky. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
And
goodness. Yeah.
like,
I had Dark Man and Dead Man mixed up there for a second.
oh God, it's so freaking weird. And so I'm supposed
How
to watch
tragic,
this.
though. He like to invite you long distance, and all of a sudden, I've had reverse. I've had someone out here, and then they broke up with me, and then there were still like 4 days left, and it's like, oh my goodness. Also, I flew to Kansas to see La La Land one time. Well, I went to visit my girlfriend at the time, and we went to see La La Land, and I'm like, that is a depressing movie. Like, just to fly halfway across the country to see.
Do not recommend.
Do
Get
not
Lilo and
recommend.
Stitch or something.
Yeah, exactly. I need some uppers. I like my movies to end on a high note. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like a good depressing movie, but not in this
Yeah.
context. And as a result, I don't even remember what happens in the movie, and I don't ever want to watch it again. So for
Yeah.
you to be like, no, that's my favorite Star Wars,
Yeah, I know. To triumph over that tragedy and just be like, yeah, this is my favorite now. I'm going to watch this dozens of times.
speaks to how
Yep.
good it is. Actually,
Yeah.
famously, we had another guest, Lisa Ponce, on because she was watching the second Back to the Future. She is
Mm.
a big fan of the first and third, but had never seen the second.
No way. Oh,
And
I can see how that happens.
she did the same thing with Star Wars because she was such a she had such a crush on the Harrison Ford character, Han, that her parents didn't want her to see
Oh
the carbonite.
no.
So
That's right.
they showed her the first movie and the third movie, and they were like,
Yeah.
she didn't until much older where she's like, oh God, there's a second movie.
Yeah, there's something else in between this. Oh my goodness, that is wow, the things that parents do and do for us and against us for the movie theater experience. Oh my goodness, that's too funny.
So that brings us to our experience right now, which is talking about
Hmm.
Paprika, which is a
Hmm.
1996. I'm going to get that date correct, I swear.
I think it's
Movie
2006, right? Is it 2006?
2006.
Okay.
I'm thinking of Perfect Blue. That's why I keep getting
Oh
confused.
yes.
Why had you not yet seen this movie?
It's his work has kind of flown under my radar, and I just haven't sat down to watch it. It's been on my to-do list for a long time because I've watched some pretty weird anime before in my life, and I just haven't sat down. And then when you and I were talking about it, I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity to finally sit down and watch this. I minored in animation in college even, and like I said, it's been on my to-do list for a long time, and just this was the perfect impetus to do it.
This is the kind of run that we're doing. I think this season on the show is we're getting a lot of like, I had intended to, but my hesitation doesn't come out of anything more than like I needed to be pushed slightly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just that little. Yeah, hey, I'm watching this thing. You want to watch this thing? Okay, let's watch this thing together. Yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
Or just having someone kind of around you being like, there's a reason to watch it, and I
Y-
swear, it's pretty
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Just need that little
So
push.
before this, had you seen any of Satoshi Kon's work?
Just a smattering of Perfect Blue years ago.
Mhm.
I just more or less had seen images or maybe short clips of his stuff. Say it was, like a YouTube breakdown of some of their work over the years, or just as a greater animation, kind of breakdown of things. But haven't really sat down and watched any of his stuff like that I can remember. So, and it's tragic that they're no longer with us to make more.
Mhm.
Um, But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I might now go back and try to visit some of the stuff that the holes that I haven't seen and fill those in.
Yeah, I think he is often cited as an example of incredibly cinematic anime
Mhm.
because if you can't tell from the way that he's talking in this particular film with the director characters, he really does have an understanding of film and he's bringing that into anime. So it's not even just that it's an animated film, it is animated in a way that feels deeply cinematic, kind of more like Akira. And nobody in their right mind is ever going to say that Akira isn't great or not know what Akira is. And yet, so much of Satoshi Kon's work is kind of lost or just not really
Yeah,
watched.
yeah. I don't think he really gets the props or the accolades that, or even just the stuff brought to the forefront. Maybe it's because he passed away when he, so yeah, a while
Uh,
back or when he was younger and didn't get to make a huge body of work. But even like you said, when you look at something like Akira, which I did see in the theater twice, um, way back when it was brought here to the United States, it was like everybody talks about Akira. Even people who haven't seen Akira talk about Akira or pay homage to it somehow with a bike slide or
Bike
a
slide,
poster or
yes.
something, and yeah. So yeah, it is a shame that his stuff is not as mainstream as it should be, I think, or talked about as much as it should be.
And ironically, it is cribbed and stolen and hidden in so much of our own stuff. So the big thing with
Oh my
Perfect
goodness.
Blue is that it is Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, and that Aronofsky had asked for permission and was told no, because Khan really believed that what he was building was a film, and that to make it live action is a little bit like to sad. It takes away from it. The animation wasn't a crutch, it was a way
Yes.
that it was supposed to be put forth, especially for something like Paprika, which is like, wow, this would require so much CGI. Why not just let it
Oh,
live in this world?
I know. It really kind of calls to mind a failed movie recently, something else I have to see, which is Electric State. And
Oh,
I first became aware of, of course, when I try to think of the name of the artist right now, I can't. That was the inspiration for all this, the imagery that went into this. Um, that's what I think of, like to bring this stuff to life. Like I think you lose the tone and the feeling and just the general. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like I look at some of these pictures and it's a car just stopped with this giant. I don't know how familiar with Electric State you are, the artwork or even the failed Netflix movie. Um, it's basically just the world after not really an apocalypse, but there's a war that happens, and then everybody puts on these entertainment visors, and a lot of people just die with these visors on because they lose themselves in this other
hmm.
world. But you see these giant, like, robotic mascots just in the world, and this girl has to go look for her brother and she goes off with this robot, this little robot sidekick. But they're just one panel imagery of this journey that she takes, and the artwork is gorgeous. It'll be like fog and mist, and this thing coming out of this mist, and it's everything is colossal and huge, and these people are just small little focuses in these drawings. That's how I feel like if you were to do Paprika, like I don't know if you could like the parade scenes and everything. I don't know. I don't want to get too far ahead of different scenes in the movie, but
We
um,
don't go chronologically. Talk whatever you
oh,
want.
perfect. I do have I do as an animator, I recognize how much work went into like the parade scenes that went in. I have one small quibble though. They reused footage multiple times of some of the parade scenes, and I get it because this is a movie where somebody animated this by hand, and I get it. Like we have a budget. If we had unlimited budget and unlimited people to work on this, we would reanimate these scenes. But there were the same scene came up multiple times, and I initially my brain was like, "Oh, that's so lazy," but then I remembered like this is a whole film. Stuff corners need to be cut, budget needs to be stayed within. So I definitely when I got done watching it was like scribble that note out, like like lazy. No, it's not. It's just whatever they could do. So yeah, if you tried to make this into live action, like I think it would lose a lot and just be too much. I think there's something about flat 2D animation, or even if this was 3D animated in a way that used 2D to be 3D, it just has that heart, that feel to it. Sometimes it's hard to explain, but yeah, CGI is so cold a lot of the times when you're animating all these things together, it loses that quality. So
And the actor doesn't seem to exist in space, and so often the performance feels disingenuous as well. Like there's not much to react to. The eye line is off. Everything's a little bit weird. And I will have to say, sadly, this conversation is timely because Amazon Prime will be releasing in August of this year a live action series adaptation of Paprika.
no way. Oh, I didn't even know
Yes.
this. Oh, come
Yeah.
on.
I didn't know
Come
this before I
on.
asked you to talk about Paprika. I found this out while I was
Oh
researching.
my
It
goodness.
is, it's going to be directed by Kathy Yan. So at least they've got
Okay.
a female director working on it.
Yeah.
They're going to try their best to adapt it. We'll see. I think that Amazon Prime is right now one of the worst studios out there. Everything that they're adapting is just Rings of Power was terrible.
Oh, I'm
Ugh.
sorry. I am currently in a love-hate relationship with Wheel of Time, which is also
Sure.
Amazon's.
Hmm.
But here's the thing. I read, not to get too far on a tangent, but I read up to book 11 in the Wheel of Time series. There are 14 books out there. I
Hmm.
knew that they were going to adapt this, so I tried to go back in and listen to them. I don't do audiobooks, but I tried to listen to audiobooks. I couldn't do it. So, but I've been watching the show, and I understand when you have books that are 600 to 1,000 pages long, you have to cut stuff. You have a budget, but that this is one of those shows that I'm talking about that, like, I hope they can finish this. They just did season 3. Season 4 is not even greenlit yet, but everybody who had said, like, and I recognize, Rings of Power is not the best. It just infuriates me a lot. This season 1 and 2, they made some direct some decisions that I'm like, why would you do this? Why? And they even made some decisions in season 3, but a lot of the naysayers for 1 and 2 came on board with season 3 and were like, this is great. So I wonder, yeah, are they going to be able to do justice to Paprika? And the fact that everything was contained, it was a novel, and they
Hmm.
turned it into this anime. It feels very contained in an hour and a half. Some things I'd love to see series made out of. You get more nuance. You get to visit the characters more.
Hmm.
In fact, I was just watching a breakdown of Andor, and someone's like, "I wish instead of 3 blocks making it 1 year, you got like they wanted to do 5 seasons, and you got more behind the scenes." And I'm thinking, no, it needs to be kind of truncated like that. Like this movie needs to be self-contained. I don't know if 4 or 5 episodes are gonna feel right with this.
Yeah, it really depends on how you approach it. And I think that that will dictate whether or not you like this. Because, like you
Hmm.
said, I'm going to go talk about this is originally a novel. And the novel was published over 4 parts that appeared multiple years on the Japanese Marie Claire. So it was published in a magazine. It was published in
Oh my
Marie
goodness.
Claire in Japan, which is
Yeah.
just fascinating as fuck to me. I want to make sure I say it was written by Yatsutaka Tsutsi. So I just want to make sure I say his name because he actually voices the shorter of the 2 bartenders in the movie.
Oh, no way. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Because I did go to Wikipedia after. That's right. He did. He's got that cameo as the voice actor. Yeah.
And Satoshi
Oh,
Kon is the taller of the 2 bartenders to give us our like liminal space where there's a kind of Greek chorus talking to us. I thought that was wicked cute.
it was so good.
But if you take a look at the original novel and compare it to what we come up with Satoshi Kon's movie, the novel is a lot more grounded in the like big sci-fi tech of how dreams are getting invaded and the ethical
Mm,
implications of doing that. Whereas I feel like this may be more about making a commentary on how thinly veiled the difference between our reality and dreams become as we allow more technology into our lives. If you want to do an adaptation of that, you don't have enough material. There's an hour and a half. If you want to do an adaptation of the book, there's a lot of shit that Satoshi Kon cut out, and a lot of minute
Yeah,
details about the characters and the buildings of their relationships that could make maybe a season, but not 2 seasons,
but not
one
two
season
seasons. Yeah. And I
to a
think
limited
as
series.
exactly, yeah, limited is the key word there.
Hmm.
As nerds, I think oftentimes people don't have all the pieces or building blocks to know enough about something like this was a novel. I didn't know it was a novel at first until I went in and did some research pre-game.
Hmm.
Um, and I think when people get passionate about things, they often forget that sometimes there are other sources that some of these things draw on, or some decisions that whether it's a series of books or it's, especially with Star Wars, there is a lot of extended universe legacy stuff that just was written that they're starting to pick and choose and bring back into the canon. So when someone says, like if they did this limited series, oh, well, this doesn't match the anime at all, but it might, more like you said, more closely resemble this. And I think that establishes these camps these days of people who are purists for one thing or purists for both things, or just they stick to one camp or the other, or they don't even know that these other things exist, and they become so passionate about like defending, like, oh, but this and this, but then someone else comes along and says, well, look, there was a series of articles published in Marie Claire. Oh my goodness, I didn't even know about that. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's just a lot out there.
And I think that when we talk about adapting something that's animated into live action, the uncanny valley is almost so horrible that like you forget that like what
Hmm.
Khan is bringing to this isn't just a really well animated human or a world
Yeah.
that's very rich, and it's a version that's illustrated in his style. It's
Hmm.
humanoid, and that
Yeah.
feels more authentic and more real, because when you dream things are slightly off, it shouldn't be super realistic. That uncanny
Hmm.
valley will take away from it. So I guess if we go into a series that's more about the tech, I still even worry about the dream sequences unless they did something like rotoscoping, or like, fine, if
Yes.
you have to use people, draw on top of them.
Yeah, yeah. And what was it? What was the movie that did that?
Scanner
About
Darkly, Waking Life.
Scanner Darkly. Yes, thank you
Ah,
so much. I'm glad we
hey.
we both connected on that one. Yeah, that was like, yeah, and you could do that. Yeah, that movie definitely had a very much a dream quality to it, and
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's going to come up looking too clean and too shiny, and
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be tough for them to pull that off if it does actually manifest.
Yeah,
But
and I do want to mention that in this film there is some CGI, and it kind of
yes,
sticks out a little bit to the point where I'm like, wish it weren't there.
yeah, yeah. There's one thing I really have to like applaud um the Japanese for when it comes to their animation, and this is something I known about them for years. I grew up watching a lot of cartoons back in the day, like Force 5 and Giant Robots and stuff like that, and Star Blazers and Captain Harlock. They draw and animate their environments and their machines like clockwork precision. There's an Instagram account that I follow called Retro Sci-Fi Arts, and it's just a lot of times it's just sequences of anime that is just like firing up a Gundam and like all the pistons going, and the computer screens coming up and the controls. There was an old school show series I used to watch, Gunsmith Cats, and they had a car, and I remember seeing behind the scenes photos of the animators bringing the actual car into the studio, and they would draw the real car. And when, the characters in it were normal anime looking style, but every single gun, every single car, vehicle was drawn with such precision that it just blew my mind. So when I'm watching this movie, when they're in the bar, when they're out
Hmm.
in the mansion, the gardens and everything is so lusciously animated. But then what I love is most anime characters come in like three different styles. I'm sure right in your head you're picturing all three right now, and I don't have to go into it, but um the characters are like animated in this almost simplistic way, so they kind of like blend right into these scenes, you know? But I can picture people like there was one scene where they're sitting at a booth in the bar, and the table is just like the wood grain on the table, and I'm like, come on, guys, like really, like that is so somebody paid that much attention to that.
And the way the ice, the circular ice inside the whiskey, they put it right down on that table, and the way they
Yes.
interact with each other, and the water through the, yeah. And so that's what I
Yeah.
explained. So there's a point where when you use CGI to try and do stuff like this, it
Hmm.
triggers what we're calling the uncanny valley. But there's a point where when you've animated it to what would be considered super hyper realistic, that triggers the exact opposite reaction from me, where I am in gobsmacking awe that human beings could paint what I am looking at to tell me a story versus like, fuck, the machine got me again.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that weird? Like how that happens sometimes? It's like,
It's
yeah,
totally opposite reaction for the same
yeah.
shit. It's impressive.
I feel that way watching rewatching the pre Star Wars prequels, um, you know, early days of like CGI, like you know, being younger, I didn't know that the clones were all CGI. I knew that Jar Jar was CGI. I knew that a lot of the environments were CGI, or even these days with the
Mhm.
volume. It's like certain companies know how to do it in a way where, you know, like I look at Tarkin from Rogue One, and I knew going in there was a little bit of that uncanny valley, but it's so almost there. Like certain things are almost there. Other things you can fudge because they're in an environment that you're not like paying close minute attention to. It's not a character that's talking. But even that I was super impressed with. And that was only what, 8 years ago, you know? Like it's getting good, but it like you said, it's like I don't know, it's just really I think it's gonna take a lot of the humanity out of the movie if they and series if they adapt it into this, like, you know, kinda the technology behind the dream stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what works when you're doing stuff like that, specifically on a show like Andor, or even Rogue One, what I loved about the
Mm.
character that Alan Tudyk plays, the
Oh,
robot
yeah.
that he plays, is that
K2SO, yeah.
he's physically present with the actors when he's delivering his lines and interacting with them, so that the
Mhm.
reactions are genuine. There's that clip that's going around where he smacks Cassius and
Yes.
and says that line. That was an ad lib line that he just threw out because they told him he was allowed to say whatever he wanted and do a couple of takes. And the
Mhm.
actor is actually like hiding a laugh because he didn't expect it, and like they kept it in anyway because it's such a
Yep.
you don't get that from will ADR that line in later.
Yeah. No, you have to have that moment just occur naturally, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of ironic because there is an aspect of paprika that is artificially created, and it might be one of the few versions where they talk about ethical or implicated or like reasons to use AI. And I
Mhm.
didn't know this until I looked it up. But Paprika is the first film to make use of a Vocaloid soundtrack, which means that the singer, whose name is
Oh.
Lola, is a computer. She is not real.
Wow, that is impressive. I know just enough about Vocaloids to be dangerous, you know?
You do know.
But that is everyone is it Miku? Is it Miku the most famous one with the blue hair? But yeah, it's like that's impressive. I didn't even know that either about the soundtrack. The soundtrack is really
Yes.
good though for that.
Hatsune Miku is the most famous
Yeah,
Vocaloid. I get confused
yeah.
because if you ask me what the most famous Vocaloid is, I think Sharon Apple from Macross Plus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just mentioned Lin Min May the other day. That's too funny that that came up in a comment, and somebody had drawn Rick Hunter, and I'm like, Lin Min May intensifies, you know? Oh my
Great,
God.
great, yeah, great. I'm actually going to have to go rewatch Macross Plus because I was talking about uh, that character Sharon Apple and the idea of a Vocaloid, and
Hmm.
whether or not, I mean, that they're using that in the whole story is about the ethical implication of the Vocaloid, but this
Yeah.
is just hidden in the soundtrack, and in fact, I want to make sure I get his name correct. The composer who put this together, Susumu Hirasawa,
Hmm.
actually hacked an English-speaking Vocaloid named Lola, and she was
Oh
always
my
supposed to say
goodness.
English words, so he hacked her and used like a MIDI player and different programs that he wrote to get
Boy.
her to sing in Japanese. And that's part of the like really ethereal disconnect that you feel while you're hearing these songs. Like
Yeah.
it's this like sometimes it's diegetic, sometimes it's not, sometimes so you never really know where you are.
Well, that's interesting. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah, it is it does have some weird implications too, you know, like he took this one thing and he hacked it in a way, and hacking is kind of a very much like a rebellious thing, or you know, like a an underhanded thing, and then made it do this other thing, which makes me think of like we were talking earlier, but it makes me think of Ghost in the Shell. You know, we were talking.
Mhm.
You know, this movie deals with people's dreams. And before we go too much further, I just want to note that my first note I made on this was Inception.
If we've gone a long time without mentioning Inception yet, so I'm like,
Yes, I applaud both of us for that. But yeah, the whole you know, basically like I don't know, it just yeah, the whole Ghost in the Shell thing, the whole like invasion of the whole takeover thing, whereas they have that dealt with people who body modded themselves with like Android and stuff and computer minds and everything, and those got hacked. But this was actually people's dreams and brains that were getting hacked to do this thing. And that was kind of very much the most surreal thing to me to see, like to think about that, like somebody in some ways we're not that far off probably from technology like that, you know, we can already scan brains and influence brains and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of scary stuff, but I definitely made the Inception note.
it's hard not to think about Inception when you think about this movie. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why, but before we go off on that, I just want to chase one idea that we're talking about right here, because I think it's really interesting and kind of at a key part of what the film is about. I just want to get the quote right, and I'm gonna have it written here. There's a point in the movie where Paprika says that are kind of like the internet, in that they're a place for repressed desires to sort of come to life. And
Hmm.
so, if we're talking about in this story, the DC Mini allows people to get into and share dreams, and someone's hacked that. So now somebody could hack into your dreams. Well, if we start to exist as avatars on the internet, as ourselves, and we release these true versions of ourselves, the more data, and we're all now like, this is how many years later, we're more afraid of our data and everything, and we start to
Yeah.
exist on the internet, we are creating a version of ourselves that could be hacked as easily as a dream with the DC Mini. And isn't that
Yeah,
really fucking scary?
it is scary. This is so funny because I was just talking to my girlfriend earlier today about avatars and how in role playing in general, when people, I have a certain philosophy about characters that I make. I want to view, like, you know, when I make a character in a video game or I make a character on paper, I want it to be different than I am in
Hmm.
real life. And a lot of people, I've gamed with all sorts of people throughout my life, online and in person. When they make a character, they make themselves. They give
Hmm.
themselves the same character flaws. Because this all came up because there's this new Kickstarter for a new RPG out there that's you're almost like a Ronin, and apparently someone was talking to me about it, and they said that you have a character flaw, and that's what you're around. And I wrote in the Discord channel, I said I have enough flaws in my real life. I don't want flaws in my character. I don't want to sit down and play something that is a carbon copy. You know, I don't want badness happening. I want to be the hero. I want to, and my girlfriend brought up Second Life, and a lot of people use that in a way to make themselves something different, or even themselves that they go into this virtual world with, you know, like Ready Player One kind of thing, where it's, but yeah, you're right. Like somebody could, what was going to be the first case of someone getting hacked in the, I mean, I'm sure it's happened in Second Life, but like on the level we're talking about, you know, where like it's like Ready Player One or Paprika, where you've got this setting that's virtual setting, and somebody comes in and just railroads your stuff, you know, and
Yeah.
scary to think about.
Have you read any of Neil Stephenson's books? I'm thinking of Snow Crash particularly.
No, I have not. No.
Snow Crash is a science fiction book where there is a virus that can be given to avatars on the like worldwide virtual reality that we can kind of hack it, put our brains into, and exist completely, that then travels back with you to your actual body and can corrupt you entirely.
Wow. Wow. So you've got a digital and a real world virus coming together and infecting both. Oof. Oof.
Great
That's
book,
no good.
highly recommend
Yeah.
it.
I'm gonna make a note of
Cannot
that.
be filmed very well. They've tried to, but there's some major issues with the main character being 12.
Oh yeah, yeah. You get into a really weird morally gray area right there.
Well, the
Yeah.
whole book is kind of about moral gray areas, and that's kind of what's so great about Paprika is that when you start to talk about these things, you start to talk about larger and larger societal issues. And I really think that sci-fi, particularly anime, does a wonderful job of that. And we want to talk about animation being only for kids. But when we start
Hmm.
talking about anime, people instantly are like, oh, it's probably sex-based. And you're like, no, it's
Yeah.
usually a headier subject that doesn't belong
Hmm.
to children, that sci-fi is so expensive to try and shoot. What if we animated it? Who that
Yes.
would be a cost of, not cheap, but a cost effective way.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. I, watching things like Akira in the theater and Evangelion and things like that. I know a lot of the Japanese, the bigger names, make these anime and these manga to sometimes they end and you're just like, what the hell, like what's the end of Evangelion about, what's going on at the end of Akira? And I know that Akira is like a 6 volume giant
Tosan,
manga in
yeah.
all, but still, like, I've read interviews with directors that are like, I just wanted to get this feeling, this thought, this social thing out there. The way it ends, we want you to talk about it, whereas Western
Mhm.
society, when they make movies, there's usually like an ending, unless you're talking about like horror or suspense, where they keep things, well, is the evil beaten, maybe, maybe not, whereas when you're watching an anime, it's like it gets done and you're like, what just happened? Like, you immediately it's open ended. They don't often put these endings on things, which infuriates me a lot. I like endings, and I like to walk out of there and be like, this is all self-contained. I've watched something. But I understand, as that was younger me. As I'm getting older, I can kind of appreciate you getting, what they're doing is getting you to talk about these things. It's
Mhm.
more or less, we've served it up for you on a platter, we've given you our vision, now it's up to you to interpret things. Which, if we were in a perfect society, everyone would get along nicely and interpret things in their own way, and then we wouldn't have like a lot of fighting about and camps about things. But
Yeah,
people get very passionate about things, especially in fandoms. But yeah.
especially in interpreting fandoms. Yeah, and
Oh my God.
I like a mix of both. I like to know that the
Mhm.
story has some sort of conflict resolution, like it needs to feel like there was a rising. I want a Shakespeare. I want a 5 act play. A little bit.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of a French film. I mean, you can give me a kind of French film like Blue is probably as far as I'm going to go for looseness, where you're like,
Hmm.
this is a lady. She got into an accident. She's trying to reassociate herself with life. It's a one sentence. It is 2 hours. There's not much
Yeah.
more going on,
Not
but
much
there's
else going on.
something going on. It's
Yeah.
something.
Yep.
So I don't want a total vibe film, but I do want to leave there thinking about it. And there's a
Hmm.
slight asterisk there. I want to leave and talk about your movie because I'm interested in the subject. I don't want to leave and talk about your movie for 2 days because I'm so frustrated that I couldn't figure out why the hell we watched your movie.
Yes.
And I'm trying
Exactly.
to make
Yeah.
meaning to what you did not make meaning to.
Hmm. Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, they talk about Seinfeld being a show about nothing. It was something, but still, it's
Something.
like still something. But yeah, sometimes movies are made, and it is just an expression of making a hour and a half, 2 hour film about a stream of consciousness. But in other ways, like watching something like this that has that underlying, message about hacking people's dreams and society and what that means in the greater overall thing. um yeah. And this movie ended, and I felt like it was like a little, like 1 minute epilogue where it's just like, okay, this, and this happened. Great. And things that I didn't even think about them happening at all, like uh, Dr. Chiba falling for her scientist friend there.
Yes.
Didn't even see that coming, and that happened all in the last like 20 minutes, which I got nothing wrong with it, but I was just like, wait a minute, I'm making notes here. I'm like, did I miss something early? There were some signs here and there. She's very almost motherly to this character,
The very childlike character, anyway.
this childlike character. Like, you need, but that just, I can see the motherly thing, but then she just went like all in. I'm married to this person now, changed my last name, like all this stuff has happened, and it's almost like maybe if you had a series like this could be fleshed out more, whereas now it's self-contained. I felt like it was not rushed, but it was just very much like, oh well, okay, well, I'm going to make a note now that this has happened. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, the bit that happens with Tokita, it kind of, when you're watching the film for the first time, you can have a little bit of a like, I guess it was the aughts and they're allowed to be this rude to this guy. I get that he is overweight, but this is
yeah,
pushing it.
pushing it.
Pushing it.
It's right
They are
there. Yeah, it's right there.
mean. But
Yeah,
then when you find out that like this was a repressed desire by her, by Chiba, that like, oh, it's just like the repressed desire to make a film. All of our characters have this repression, and by being with Paprika, by literally being Paprika,
yeah,
we release ourselves from this guilt and become our authentic self. And that is way more fleshed out in the story, where their
yeah,
whole and the fact that they fall in love, so that I definitely think could be fixed in this series, because it does suddenly
yeah.
start to feel like, and they're together.
Exactly. And also, so as I was going through, I was making notes. I was super impressed with the credits for this uh, movie, and I'm always really. I think one of the first movies I was super impressed with the credits for was Panic Room, because it shows you like see a city, and then the credits are in that 3D style, like hanging over buildings, or they're
Mhm.
like, that was the first time I really sat down and was like, wow, these people are doing something really cool with the credits. It's not just a title card and some things flashing up here and there. So I was really impressed with the credits here, and I'm making notes, and as the credits are ending, I'm like, Dr. Chiba equals Paprika. Like, the Paprika character all of a sudden like flies into this car, and then it goes past a bridge, and then it's Dr. Chiba in the driver's seat, and then I'm like, okay, is that what's happening here? And there was really no background into how this person has split themselves into these two separate characters and into this Ready Player One avatar real life thing. It's almost like this magical girl kind of thing, this persona that she can just not really turn on herself. She's got to enter this state with the DC Mini, but still, it's like you don't get this like where this character came from. And I once again have no problem with this. I'm not begging for answers, and I love it when a movie gives me this thing and serves it up to me, and I'm not like, oh, I got to dig deeper, or this is just coming up out of nowhere. I liked that we didn't get an explanation. It was just, she has these two personas, and this is there to help people, and this one's to help people in the real world, and they kind of come together at times. And yeah, so
You can kind of deduce that she's a psychoanalyst. You're like, oh, so
yes.
she's helping this other guy. She seems to be
Oh,
talking a lot about Jungian philosophies and dreams. Okay,
mm-hmm.
so she's a doctor of psychotherapy, but
Yep.
it doesn't give you much more than that. And that is a common complaint. I think this is also a really great time to talk about Inception, because when people are saying that they don't like this movie, they don't typically like how disjointed it feels, how much it doesn't hold your hand, and how much it doesn't really, it just hits the ground running. And then it is as perhaps disconnected as your own dreams are. I think that's on purpose. But the reason I hate Inception is because I feel like it holds your hand the entire time and literally like outlines on that board what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. It does. It really does hold your hand. And this, like you said, doesn't. This is just you're served these things one after another. It feels like a dream, whereas Inception, you get these dream sequences, but everything feels so grounded and so like, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to put these things on. We're going to do this. We have to hack this guy. We have to, and it's just one after another. With this, you really get no feeling as to backstory for a lot of these characters or what's going to happen next. Yeah.
And the dreams in Inception, the dream states, are just as real as the non-dream states, even the ones where
Yeah.
the buildings are folding. And that
Yeah.
is such a loss.
It
Like,
is.
you usually know you're dreaming when you're in a dream because of its inability to, it's a facsimile of what should be real. Suddenly you turn around and
Mhm.
you're like, our dining room isn't made of Fisher Price shit. This is a dream.
Exactly. Or, there's no like blur effect anywhere where like you can focus on the things right in front of you, but the things in your periphery are dark or blurred or whatever. And I think that Nolan really did, it's Christopher Nolan, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Did really, really good with the effects. This train just coming down the street. They got the heist, they got the buildings folding, all this other stuff. But it felt kind of sterile and stale, and just there wasn't, yeah, like you said, it didn't feel dreamy. It just felt bizarre. It just felt grounded, and it should definitely have felt more. I think one of the better scenes was the hallway fight scene, and even then it was kind of like wire fu to me. I know how they filmed it. I've watched things where the things rotating, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is like jumping around
Hmm.
and everything. But if you were to animate that, the characters would probably be definitely flying most of the time, or just things would come at you slowly and like fluidly. But I mean, that's the limitations of animation versus a more grounded live action thing like we were talking about earlier. And I'm wondering if they are going to get to make this in a way where it's going to feel more Inception than Paprika,
I mean,
the anime.
I think the heart of this show is to go in with the expectation to try and like it, and then,
Hmm.
to see how we get. I do think that
Yeah.
it's incredibly telling that the best scene from Inception is the one that is almost the most literal rip from Paprika. The long hallway scene where a guy
The
in a
long
suit
hallway
is
scene.
chasing it. Like,
Oh my god.
so, I mean, Perfect Blue is bad. Perfect Blue is shot for shot recreations in Requiem for a Dream, but it is a little
Yeah.
bittersweet to be like, yeah, so about that hallway scene, Mr. Nolan?
Yeah.
Because he
And
has
I
never officially said that it was
no.
inspired by this film.
No, I read an article where, yeah, he dances around it, but it's like, come on, this is such a nod. And I understand that two inventors can come up with something on their own, or even three people, like the radio or something else. But still, this is like, yeah, yeah, I just wrote Inception right across the top as soon as I saw these things. And I'm like, yeah, this is definitely. And then to read that afterwards, to say that he's never really, owned up to it. Yeah, there's so much. It's the meat and potatoes. It's the spine.
Yeah. So I do also worry that there's a viewer who may watch this film without checking the dates and be like, this stupid anime is just Inception.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that this is from 2006. Um, I thought it was older.
Set in 2012. It's supposed to be, the year is 2012. It's 2006 when it came out. But I did also think it was closer to Perfect Blue. I had forgotten that this was literally the last thing he did before he died in 2010 of pancreatic cancer. In fact, the movie that the detective is walking into at the end, Dream Machine, is the next movie that he was in the process of writing that never got finished. Madhouse picked it up, tried to finish it, and they ran out of money. And to this date, they have not the ability to finish it. It is so close. It sounds so interesting too. They described it as like a road trip movie for robots, starring only robots.
I love it.
So yeah, as we approach the end of the show, I do like to ask the same questions, even though it's kind of obvious at this point. But did you like this movie?
I I, I did.
So.
I did. I mean, in some ways, it frustrates me because once again, it's like one of those things where it's like I don't get all the answers. But I loved, from an animation standpoint, being having a minor in animation, I drank every frame of this movie in. In fact, I want to definitely go back and watch it again just because. I know I missed details of just the environments and everything. Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
recommend it for sure.
I definitely recommend going back multiple times just for the density of the plot and then also for experiencing the soundtrack, which may not
Hmm.
be everybody's, cup of tea because it is weird, but just noting that it's there, and you can watch it sometimes with the American dub, maybe it's the Japanese dub, just feel it out because it's not a particularly long movie either.
Oh yeah.
I kind of quick off the top of your head as an animator, what would you say are give me two or three movies that you recommend people who are interested in becoming animators, like these are deeply influential for you?
Oh, well, I mean, anything, anything to me, early Disney,
Yeah.
anything that is as 2D,
Fantasia.
everything from Snow White, to Beauty, even up to Beauty and the Beast, where it's a good mixture of you get the CGI of certain scenes, early CGI, to still hand-drawn stuff. Yeah, I would definitely recommend anything just to get the movements down. Their squash and stretch, their overextension, their facial expressions. They also rotoscoped a lot of things early
Mm-hmm.
on, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with it. So yeah, anything early Disney would be high on my list of watching, just to get influence from.
Yeah, I think people look down a lot on the concept of rotoscoping, but like most animation is done off of the actors giving the lines, using their faces, all of that. And why not? Why not use
Exactly.
that? Seems
Hmm.
silly. Oh, cool. Yeah, Jared is a huge fan of Fantasia, and I absolutely agree with that. I'm surprised that they even go as far as we had done the Emperor's New Groove, which is the last hand drawn Disney. That's quite late for as far as I thought
It
they would have
is.
stopped much sooner than that.
It's one of my girlfriend's favorite Disney. I think it is her favorite. Besides
It's
Alice in
so
Wonderland and
good.
that, I'll go downstairs and she'll be watching Emperor's New Groove all the time, and I'll sit down and I'll watch it, and I'll look at all. I'm like, yeah, this is all hand drawn still. I heard a rumor because, and this is probably just the haters, because the live action stuff is doing so piss poorly these days that they have thought about going back to the 2D animation. And I don't know if there's a grain. Yeah, I liked it when Pixar was handling all of the
Mm,
experimental CGI, that kind of
mm-hmm.
stuff, and Disney. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand there's limitations to the budgets and things you can do, but I'd love to see them just out of nowhere in the next year or two announce a 2D movie. I think people would just be all over it. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Even if that's a rumor, I love being lied to.
Yeah, exactly. Please lie to me more in a good way. Yeah,
In
exactly.
this, and that's the kind of news I need today. My next question is: would you recommend this to other people? And if there are any caveats, like obviously there's the scene where the her friend is trying to possess her, literally losing track of himself, and it's kind of like a sexual assault scene. That scene's rough. Obviously, this movie is not for kids, and it's rated that way. It is
Hmm.
considered a thriller. Those kind of caveats, if you need them, would you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I think I definitely would recommend to a certain subset of my friends, and
Mhm.
and even that a subset of that I would definitely give some, warnings to on certain things, like you said, that scene. But I would, and I think that I know enough people, or just I might bring this up in conversation with people and say, have you ever seen this?
Mhm.
Definitely, it's a conversation starter for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think considering the two big Satoshi Kons are Perfect Blue and Paprika, and of course there are other stuff to watch. Tons. I mean, there's Memories is a really good three-part piece, and they're stunningly well animated. However, it is labeled sci-fi family, and I can't stress enough the family should not be on that. I
You
don't
have a
know
very weird family if
why.
you, yeah, no,
Um,
somebody lied.
so if you're looking at Paprika versus Perfect Blue has a huge sexual assault line plot to it and makes it a much harder recommendation. I feel like
Yeah,
Paprika is a great way to start people into this, like, hey, have you ever seen animation shot like a film?
yes,
Yeah.
100%.
If they can't watch Akira, because I mean, let's just put Akira in front of people's faces. It's the most perfect movie ever.
It is, it's so good.
The light in that is great. And my third question is: did you regret this experience? Does it make you feel like maybe you should watch more movies that you have been hesitant about?
Well, I definitely don't regret it. I definitely think I need to go in and watch more of his work.
Mm.
and just pick out definitely some more well animated features that maybe I haven't seen yet. And I know that they're out there. I just need to do some research and get some recommendations. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know that I still need to see Memoirs of a Snail, which is a stop animation film that came out this year that is supposed to be just poignantly intense
Hmm.
and beautiful. I haven't seen Wild Robot either, which I hear is quite poignant.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
I wish I had seen it in the theater. Also,
Mhm.
Flow was really good.
Oh,
I don't know if
yeah.
you've seen Flow yet.
I can't watch movies where animals are in distress for long periods of time. It triggers like a panic attack in me.
No, fair enough, because this movie is
Uh,
one big panic
but it
attack
looks
then.
beautiful,
Yeah.
and I'm so
Yeah.
happy it's doing so well. And the people who made
Yeah.
it are so fucking sweet. I just want to squeeze
Yeah.
them.
Oh yeah. We need
Yeah,
more movies like that for sure. And
yeah.
well, I heard there is going to be a sequel to Wild Robot, so um, I'm here for it. It was so
I'm here
good.
for all of that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a wonderful conversation. We could keep it going for forever, honestly. I could keep
Yeah.
talking about anime, especially with someone who is as versed as you are as well. I do know we are under a little bit of time constraints. Again, all of this stuff is in the liner notes, so do visit the Etsy shop. Go find him on social media because you can find out where he's going to be at what conventions, and that's a great way to actually just talk to somebody and get to see the art in person. It's lovely. I love conventions.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This is great. I'm so glad we connected and did this, and it got me to watch something that I'd been meaning to watch for a while. So double duty.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you. Great. And we're going to bump into the corrections and omissions where I'm going to fix anything that I might have misspoken about here or anything where I was like, who was that guy? And then we never told you who that guy was. If you're
Hmm.
still waiting to find out who's that guy, here you go. All right, folks, it is time for corrections and omissions. Because sometimes our brains move faster than our facts, and we like to keep things accurate around here. First up, I said that Deadman was Darren Aronofsky, and no, it isn't. That one's on me. That's probably speaks to how traumatic the experience of trying to watch that film that way was. If you don't know, Dead Man, the black and white acid western with Johnny Depp, is actually directed by Jim Jarmusch. It's not even close, really. Aronofsky was off doing Pi, I think, when Jarmusch was being cool and cryptic in the desert making this one. So, touche à moi. Next, on our Macross plus Robotech tangent, which, yes, we are allowed to have. Shout out to Aaron for bringing up Lin Minwei and Rick Hunter. I also mentioned Sharon Apple from Macross Plus, and all of those are real characters in there, but I just wanted to clarify for anyone newer to the franchise. Minmay and Rick are from the original Macross or Robotech, if you grew up with it with the American dub, while Sharon Apple is specifically from Macross Plus, which came out in 1994. No correction needed, just a little context drop in case you were anime curious. Oh, and speaking of names, I accidentally called Andor's main guy Cassius instead of Cassian Andor. Look, I was thinking Roman senators, clearly. But yeah, the correct name is Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna. Great show. I will definitely endeavor to get that right the next time I mention it. And lastly, Aaron and I got deep into Twilight Imperium, and again, no correction needed here. I just wanted to say that that game is as long and intense as we made it sound. It is a real thing, and yes, people do play it regularly, myself included. I just wanted to make an extra shout out to the Space Cats Peace Turtle podcast, by the way, because they're really awesome. I encourage you to check them out. They're super fun to listen to and get involved in the game. This game has lore and drama and politics and heartbreak. It is like Dune, but with dice and cards and everything. Check it out. I highly encourage you to give the game a go. All right, that is it for this week's self-inflicted fact check. Of course, if we missed anything else, feel free to yell at us nicely in the comments. And that's it. That's a wrap on today's episode. Big thanks again to Aaron Wood for joining me and for talking about Paprika, Dream Logic, and discussing his artwork with us. Again, you probably have seen some of it and you just don't realize it yet. So definitely check the liner notes for all the links to his stuff, like his Etsy shop if you want to grab your own Sci-Fi National Park style poster, or his social media so you can catch him at the next convention he'll be at. And if you're not already, you can find me on every single social media platform under the handle @Movie Runtime. And that's where I post stuff about upcoming episodes of this podcast, weird movie thoughts and trivia, reviews, other guesting I'll be doing on different podcasts, any kind of information about what I'm up to. And if you like the show, I would love it if you subscribed. We are on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And remember, the video version is also available on Spotify. So if you want to see my face reacting to the phrase bacon propaganda posters, that's the place to do it. Oh, and also, if you are a local filmmaker or film-adjacent person, there is a filmmaker meetup happening May 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Abandoned Building Brewery in Easthampton, Mass. And it is sponsored by the lovely folks at the Easthampton Film Festival. And I'll be there. So come by, say hi, grab a drink, let's talk shop or horror shorts or whatever weird project you might be brewing. And speaking of the festival, the 4th annual Easthampton Film Fest just happened, and it was a blast. I got to host the talkbacks for both the comedy shorts and the horror shorts, which meant I got to ask filmmakers questions like, how did you make that chest explode? And where can I see more chest exploding? It was such a great weekend, and I definitely encourage you to check them out, and maybe you can catch some of their stuff online. Now that is it for me. Until next time, watch weird movies, support your local artists, and don't let anyone tell you anime isn't cinema.